The fog rolls thick over the gaslit streets of Victorian London, curling around cobblestones and clinging to the edges of every shadow. It's in this hazy, smoke-filled world that Sherlock Holmes thrives, where a single misplaced footstep, a hastily discarded ticket stub, or the faintest tremor in a voice can unravel the most elaborate deceptions. Tonight's mystery begins not with a scream or a gunshot, but with something far quieter, a cough. A seemingly insignificant sound, dismissed by everyone except, of course, by the world's only consulting detective. To ordinary minds, it's just a reflex, a nuisance, but to Holmes, it's a cipher, a thread waiting to be pulled until the entire tapestry of a crime comes undone. Picture this, a dimly lit drawing room, the air heavy with the scent of pipe tobacco and old books. Dr. Watson leans forward in his chair, brow furrowed as Holmes paces, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Remarkable, Watson," he murmurs, "how a man's very breath can betray him." The good doctor shakes his head, baffled. How could a cough, a thing so common, so fleeting, hold the key to a murder? Yet here lies the genius of Sherlock Holmes. His ability to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, to hear the whispers of guilt where others hear only empty noise. This, dear viewer, is the heart of the clue hidden in a cough, a case that will challenge even Holmes' sharpest instincts, where the smallest detail becomes the most damning evidence. What makes this mystery so captivating isn't just the crime itself, but the way Holmes dissects it. Imagine realizing that the rhythm of a cough could reveal a man's profession, or that the rasp of a throat might hint at a secret poison. Every clue is a puzzle piece, and Holmes' mind is the only one sharp enough to fit them together. As we step into this shadowy world of hidden motives and razor-thin deductions, you'll find yourself hanging on every word, every pause, every revelation. Because this isn't just a story about solving a crime, it's about witnessing the sheer brilliance of a mind that operates in ways most of us can't even fathom. So lean in, listen closely, and prepare to see the world through the eyes of Sherlock Holmes, where even a cough can speak volumes. The knock at the door of 221B Baker Street is hesitant, almost swallowed by the patter of rain against the window panes. When Mrs. Hudson ushers the visitor in, the man who steps into the room seems to carry the weight of the storm with him, shoulders hunched, hands trembling as they clutch a sodden overcoat. His face is pale beneath the brim of his hat, eyes darting like a cornered animal's, but it's the sound that fills the room that truly captures Holmes' attention. Not a word, not a plea, just a wet, ragged cough, muffled hastily into a handkerchief already stained with flecks of rust brown. Watson's medical instincts flare, but Holmes' gaze sharpens into something colder, more calculating. He sees what others would dismiss, the way the man's fingers tighten around the fabric a second too long, the way his breath hitches not from illness but fear. The stranger introduces himself as Edwin Vickery, a clerk at a shipping firm down by the docks, or so he claims. His voice wavers like a candle in the wind, each sentence punctuated by that same wretched cough. I require your discretion, Mr. Holmes," he rasps, mopping his brow with the handkerchief. "There are matters that cannot be brought to the police." Watson leans in, recognizing the look of a man who's slept with one eye open for weeks. But Holmes remains still, his attention fixed on the way Vickery's sleeve rides up just enough to reveal a thin, angry scratch along his wrist. A scratch that doesn't match the story of a quiet life led at a ledger. What follows is a tale so convoluted, it would strain credulity, if not for the desperation in Vickery's eyes. A missing colleague, a ledger with entries that don't add up. And always that cough, worsening whenever the name Blackwell escapes his lips. To Watson, it's the cough of a man plagued by guilt or grief. But Holmes hears the lie in it, the way it cracks at the edges like old varnish. This isn't just illness. It's performance, and performances, as any detective knows, are meant to distract. By the time Vickery departs, leaving behind the faint scent of salt water, and something metallic beneath the lavender cologne, Holmes is already at the window, watching the man's shadow dissolve into the fog. "Remarkable, Watson," he murmurs, fingertips pressed together. "Did you note how he never once coughed when speaking of the weather?" The moment the door clicks shut behind Edwin Vickery, Holmes springs into motion, not toward his violin or his chemical bench, but to the armchair where their visitor had sat. His fingers trace the indentation left in the cushion, then dart to pluck a single thread from the fabric, holding it up to the lamplight. "Observe, Watson," he says, voice low and edged with triumph. "Lanolin and salt. A clerk who spends his days indoors yet reeks of the docks. But it's the handkerchief, abandoned in Vickery's haste, that confirms his suspicion." Holmes unfolds it with the precision of a surgeon, revealing not just the rust-colored stains, but something far more telling: a faint, almost imperceptible sheen along the folds. "Alum," he murmurs. "A trick as old as the stage. Rub it on the throat, and even the healthiest man can produce a convincing cough." Watson blinks, struggling to keep pace. "You mean it's artifice? But why?" Holmes' smile is razor thin. "Consider the timing, my dear doctor. Every cough coincided with a question about Blackwell Shipping's ledger. A diversion, Watson. A magician's flourish to draw the eye away from the real sleight of hand." He strides to the window, where the fog has begun to lift, revealing the silhouette of a warehouse across the Thames. Vickery isn't ill, he's terrified. That cough isn't a symptom, it's a shield, and shields, as you know, are only carried into battle. What Holmes pieces together next would make a lesser mind real. The alum-laced handkerchief points to premeditation, the scratch on the wrist to a struggle. Even the cadence of Vickery's coughing fits, always a half-beat too slow, too deliberate, betrays rehearsal. But the masterstroke comes when Holmes retrieves yesterday's newspaper, flipping to the shipping notices with a predator's focus. "The SS Blackwell," he reads aloud, "delayed due to unforeseen irregularities." His finger stabs the page. Irregularities don't leave scratches, Watson. Blood-stained ledgers do. The brilliance of Holmes' deduction lies in its simplicity. While Scotland Yard would chase phantoms, the ailing clerk, the missing colleague Holmes recognizes the cough for what it truly is: a breadcrumb. Each forced hack, each overacted grimace, leads not to a sict, but to a smuggling ring operating under Blackwell's cover. The alum is the key. Too crude for a genuine sufferer, too precise for coincidence. And when Holmes and Watson finally confront Vickery at the docks at dawn, the man doesn't cough at all. Instead, he reaches for a revolver, and in that silent, frozen moment, the last illusion shatters. This is the alchemy of Holmes' genius. Where others see reflex, he sees strategy. A cough becomes a confession, a tremor, a trail. And as the case closes with Vickery's arrest and the recovery of the stolen goods, Watson can only shake his head in wonder. "All this from a handkerchief," he mutters. Holmes, already turning to the next puzzle, corrects him without looking up. "No, Watson, from the absence of one." Edwin Vickery's past unravels like a spool of thread dropped down a flight of stairs, messy, revealing, and impossible to ignore once Holmes tugs at the right end. That meek clerk persona, a carefully constructed lie. The truth whispers in the ledger's discrepancies, shouts from the alum-stained handkerchief. and finally roars when Holmes tracks the man to a shabby attic flat near Limehouse. The place reeks of more than damp wool and cheap tallow candles. It carries the sharp, acrid bite of chemical experiments gone awry. Vials line a makeshift shelf, their labels peeled and rewritten in a frantic hand. Not a clerk's handwriting. Holmes murmurs, gloved fingers brushing the smudged ink. A chemist's. The cluttered desk tells its own story. Beneath a stack of shipping manifests lies a torn photograph. A younger Vickery standing beside a man with a spiderweb tattoo creeping up his neck. Sealer's Blackwell. The name clicks into place like a bullet casing. Blackwell Shipping wasn't just a front for smuggling. It was a syndicate's lifeline, and Vickery. Their disgraced alchemist, forced to Dr. Ledger's after a botched batch of synthetic morphine drew too much heat. Every cough in Baker Street takes on new meaning now. Not just a shield, but a signal, a desperate attempt to reach someone beyond Holmes' parlor. Watson frowns at the odd arrangement of medicine bottles on the windowsill. Odd place to keep tonics. Shouldn't they be by the bed? Holmes doesn't answer. He's too busy lifting a bottle to the light, watching how the afternoon sun fractures through the glass. Not medicine, Doctor, coordinates. The bottles aren't haphazard. They're angled like compass needles, their stoppers pointing toward the river, and that scent clinging to them. Not camphor or quinine, but something far rarer, methylene blue, a dye used by spies to watermark messages. The bed tells the rest. The sheets are taut. Military corners no trace of a sick man's restless nights. But the pillow, Holmes digs beneath it and extracts a single sheet of rice paper, its surface pocked with tiny pinpricks. Braille, he breathes, for a man who isn't blind. Each dot corresponds to a dock, a shipment, a deadline. Vickery wasn't just afraid of Blackwell's syndicate. He was their prisoner, coughing coded warnings into his handkerchief while his hands shook from withdrawal, not illness. Downstairs, the landlady wrings her apron. Poor soul, cough kept the whole house awake. Holmes' eyes narrow. Did it now at regular intervals, perhaps. 3 sharp, 2 long. Her startled gasp is all the confirmation he needs. The cough wasn't just a distress signal, it was a countdown. And as Holmes pockets the rice paper, the clock tower across the river strikes 4. Its chimes drowned out by the shrill whistle of an incoming freighter. The SS Blackwell, right on schedule. The handkerchief left behind by Edwin Vickery holds more than just the ghost of a cough. It carries the faint, metallic tang of something far more sinister. Holmes lifts it to the light, his sharp eyes tracing the irregular patterns in the rust-colored stains. Not blood, Watson, he murmurs, pressing the fabric to his nose. Ferric oxide and potassium nitrate, a compound favored by forgers to age documents, and by bomb makers to mask the scent of gunpowder. The implications hang heavy in the air. This isn't merely a case of smuggling. It's a web of deception woven with scientific precision. Watson frowns, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. Surely a man's cough can't be so revealing, Holmes. It's just a reflex. Nothing is just anything. Holmes interrupts, his voice like a scalpel. Consider the timing. The cough worsens when Blackwell's name is spoken, yet vanishes when discussing the weather. That's not illness, it's conditioning. He tosses the handkerchief onto the table with deliberate disdain. Our Mr. Vickery has been trained like a dog to flinch at certain words. And the ones holding the leash, the same men who mix chemicals not for medicine, but for mayhem. The proof arrives with gruesome swiftness. By dawn, word reaches Baker Street of a body fished from the Thames, a reclusive chemist named Langford, his throat raw from coughing. His fingers stained the same telltale orange as Vickery's handkerchief. The coroner calls it pneumonia. Holmes knows better. Langford specialized in delayed action toxins. He says, examining the dead man's notebook under a magnifying glass. See these calculations. He was perfecting a compound that irritates the lungs slowly, mimicking consumption. A perfect weapon for a syndicate that prefers its witnesses to silence themselves. Tracking the poison's origin leads to a shabby apothecary near the docks. Its proprietor a twitching wreck of a man named Hewitt. Holmes barely needs to press him. The man's terror does the talking. "They made me brew it," Hewitt gasps, flinching at every shadow. "Said if I didn't, they'd do to my daughter what they did to Langford." His ledger confirms deliveries to Blackwell Shipping and to a wealthy philanthropist's home. The name makes Holmes go very still. Sir Alistair Montague, celebrated patron of the arts, whose upcoming banquet for Parliament's elite now takes on a horrifying new context. Montague's public charm masks a viper's cunning. His donations fund laboratories. His soirees host the very officials who regulate chemical imports. A man who poisons not just bodies, but systems, Holmes mutters, pacing like a caged tiger. The cough's pattern reveals the final piece. Vickery's fits weren't random. 3 sharp hacks, 2 prolonged wheezes, a crude but effective code counting down to the banquet. He wasn't lying to us, Watson. He was screaming for help in the only way left to him. Holmes' counterstroke is audacious. He has Vickery exaggerate his coughs at strategic moments, feeding false timetables to Montague's spies. Meanwhile, Scotland Yard storms a riverside warehouse, catching syndicate members mid-exchange. But Montague slips away, leaving behind a note in elegant script. A shame. The champagne would have been effervescent. The race to the banquet is a blur of clattering hooves and Watson's frantic pulse in his ears. They arrive as waiters circulate trays of crystal flutes. Holmes, disguised as a sommelier, swaps the contaminated bottles with a flick of his wrist. When Montague finally notices, his smile doesn't falter until Holmes murmurs, "Alum for the cough, cyanide for the guests." A shame you didn't account for one variable. "And what's that?" Montague hisses. A detective who listens. The aftermath finds Vickery recovering, though his lungs will never fully heal. "You saved thousands," Watson assures him. The man's laugh turns into a wet cough. "No, Holmes did, I just made the right noise at the right time." Upstairs in their sitting room, Holmes traces the rim of his untouched glass. The smallest details scream the loudest. Watson. One need only have the ears to hear them. Outside, London's ordinary sounds, carriages, chatter, the occasional cough blend into the night, each carrying secrets waiting to be heard. Sherlock Holmes' greatest weapon was never his magnifying glass or his chemical experiments. It was his ability to see beyond the obvious, to hear the unspoken confessions in a man's breath. This case, built on something as fragile as a cough, reminds us that the world is layered with secrets waiting to be uncovered. Every detail, no matter how small, carries weight. A lesson as true now as it was in the gaslit alleys of Victorian London. What makes these stories timeless isn't just the thrill of the chase, but the way they train us to look closer. Holmes teaches us that deception often hides in plain sight, wrapped in ordinary gestures. A cough isn't just a reflex. It can be a mask, a signal, even a cry for help. And if something as simple as a handkerchief can unravel an entire smuggling ring, imagine what else might be hiding in the pages of Conan Doyle's stories, waiting for a sharp-eyed reader to notice. So the next time you pick up a Holmes adventure, read with his eyes. Listen for the pauses, the odd turns of phrase, the details that don't quite fit. Because the genius of these mysteries isn't just in their solutions, it's in the way they invite us to become detectives ourselves. And who knows, The clue you overlooked today might be the one that cracks the case tomorrow. As for our next investigation, let's just say it involves a violin, a missing will, and a single drop of ink that shouldn't have been there. But until then, if you enjoyed this deep dive into Holmes' world, don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries unraveled. Drop a comment below what's your favorite Holmes moment, or the detail that surprised you the most. After all, the game is never truly afoot without fellow detectives to share it with.